tunalima hapa ni ukulima unakuaga na ugumu kwa sababu ni mahali ambapo hakuna maji. Na maji inapatikana kwa wakati mmoja wakati mwingine. Na maji ikiisha, ikiwa hauna storage, wewe mimea yako yote ambayo ulikuwa unapanda inakauka yote kwa sababu ni mahali ya jua. Na kile nilionelea nikaona ni vizuri kulingana na vile masomo ambayo nimesoma niwe nikifanya mixed farming. Ukipanda mahindi jua ikuwe na dry, sasa utakuta ya kwamba hiyo mahindi yote inapotea. Lakini ukipanda, tuseme upande maharagwe, upande viazi, upande mihogo, upande hata matunda, hiyo inabidi ya kwamba hii ikipotea itasimamiwa na hii nyingine. Kwa hivyo hakuna wakati ambao utaenda njaa. Kwa sababu hata mandizi ukipanda, hata wakati wa kiangazi, mandizi gadi tu inaendelea. Kwa hivyo na kitu kama cassava, unakuta hata cassava yenyewe ukipanda hata kukauke aje iko chini. Hata kukija hii locust ikikula matawi, kuna chakula ambayo wewe utabakichwa.
Well, we're back. Thank you for staying with us here on Farm Kenya. Again, my name is Peter Wakaba. I'm still here in the studio with two ladies from USAID. First, of course, is Margaret Kahiga, Chief of Party for the Nawiri Project, and Jennifer Maura. She is the Resilience Coordinator at USAID, overseeing management and coordination of resilience portfolios across East Africa and here in Kenya. Again, karibuni sana. Now, before we went on the break, we had mentioned two key things. The gender aspect, I know we touched on it before in a very small way. I want to start off with you, Margaret. And the fact of the matter is that this transformation in not just the livelihoods, but the entire farming ecosystem for these communities is very empowering to women. Talk to us about how that works and what that looks like.
Yeah. Traditionally, if you look at the traditional pastoralism, a lot of times the women did not have as much space as the men in terms of even what they are able to own.
Yes.
And even currently in a lot of the families, you'll find that for the bigger herds like camels, the cattle, they'll always be owned by the men. The women might own a few goats here and there, but with this diversification and the agropastoralism, the women actually are finding more space and are getting more empowered, because a lot of the people we are working with in terms of these farming activities, you'll find that it's mostly women. And this is also because a lot of times they're the ones who are also left behind, like especially when the men have gone herding. So this is actually a space for them.
Yes.
And again, also when we are looking at issues to do with water and even developing these water systems,
yes,
there is a lot of participation by women. And part of that reason is because traditionally it's the women who will go look for water. And when they find these other things that they can actually do with this water, the productive aspect of water, by making it more productive for them to be able to grow other things, this is very, very empowering for them. And they're actually able to be able to earn something from these farming activities.
Yes. And the provision of water alone means that they no longer have to spend half the day walking long distances to that sort of thing. Yes. So this is the time they're putting into the farming then.
Exactly. Now they have more time to actually be more productive, because this other time is just the walking time. And of course also by the time they walk maybe for 7-10 kilometers, when you come back you actually really can't be very productive. You'll be very tired to be able to do anything else. But here where you can actually be able to have water near your home, and at the same time you can also be able to get access to water that you can actually be able to produce something near where you live. That's very empowering.
Jennifer, there are those who would say that all these changes then are disenfranchising and disempowering men. But from where we sit, this broad-based change is benefiting everybody. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think from a household income standpoint, when you have multiple adult members, both men and women, being able to produce an income that can coexist in the family to be used for access to paying school fees, accessing food, and also growing that household income so that they can prosper and have livelihood opportunities, I think is a positive. And so we're seeing both men and women embracing some of the value addition, whether it's the agriculture, where they're producing additional crops, or we're seeing value addition and even diversifying into other non-traditional commodities such as poultry, or value addition type efforts as it relates to the livestock sector itself. And women have roles to play in those. And so we're seeing ability for both men and women to see their household prosper. And I think that's what is positive situation through the adaptations that are happening with technology and innovation. And also the importance of, as I said, the access to essential services. Being able to pay school fees and have food at the household level is one of the most joyful things a family can have, whether you're in the borderlands of Kenya or here in a rural or urban setting. And so those two things are wonderful for at the family setting to bring peace and cohesion at the household level, but also in a larger community where everyone can benefit from the opportunities that the diversifications are bringing.
Margaret, people with choices, they have different foods to tap, they have different economic activities, can then bring up healthier populations. You talked about children and the reduction in incidences of malnutrition. Talk to us about the broad-based impact this has on society as a whole in terms of human development, in terms of how they learn, how they grow, and that sort of thing. What sort of impact have you been seeing?
It's very critical for us to have a healthy population, and you cannot actually have a healthy population if a child is malnourished. And from the research, it shows that if a child is malnourished, especially when younger, of course also that affects their cognitive development, which means that also this can lead to some problems with their development and their learning later in life. So for us to actually be able to have a healthy population and a population that will be very productive in future, it's really important for us to invest in the health of the children. And we have had problems, especially in the north, where we have had over the years a lot of very high malnutrition levels, especially when it comes to acute malnutrition. And this is one of the reasons why for Nawiri we are investing a lot in trying to address the various drivers of this acute malnutrition to ensure that we can actually be able to work with communities, with the government, to make sure that we sustainably reduce those levels. In some of the villages, you could find that even up to 40%, 30% of the children are malnourished. And that is way very high. It's totally unacceptable. Actually, we should not be having any malnutrition rates even beyond even 10% is pretty high. And if you compare that with some other areas in Kenya, we find that the northern region has been disadvantaged when it comes to that. And that's why we are investing a lot and working together with the government and the communities to ensure that we can actually be able to reduce these levels of malnutrition in these areas.
Jennifer, I want us to talk about technology now and the impact that can have, and a very simple one. The fact that we have M-Pesa and these women now have access to some sort of banking mechanisms has given them complete financial freedom. Talk to us about that and its impact.
M-Pesa is a powerful tool of innovation here in Kenya. With USAID through the programming with the livestock market systems activity that was a part of the Feed the Future initiative, the program we've been able to partner in the context of Old Dinero. And it was an area that years ago did not have connectivity. And so the Safaricom came in and put in a tower, brought access to the mobile phone, brought access to mobile money, and now today it's a thriving market that's in a very remote area, linking part of Isiolo County with Laikipia and Samburu. And the community members in that area are now able, through the access of technology, in this case the mobile peace and security has changed, so they're able to have markets on a more regular basis. More traders and market actors from across parts of Kenya are able to access that market and bring commodity in as well as take commodity out.
And so you don't have to carry cash.
And you don't have to carry cash. And so we're seeing large incomes increase, access to services,
Yes.
And larger stakeholder involvement across different sectors are able to come into that market as it truly has become an economic hub for the Old Dinero communities that it services. And so I think it's a perfect example of how innovation and technology, bringing that closer to the people and being able to access it and utilize it to really have impact on people's lives here in Kenya. And we're pleased to be a part of that partnership.
Well, we've seen attempts to build on top of that secondary, so to say, service, which is now the weather-based index insurance that targets not just the crops but also the livestock. And this actually creates the resilience that we've talked about so much for farmers. Talk to us about the impact that this can have if it becomes broad-based and self-sustaining.
Yeah. Index-based insurance in crops and livestock obviously creates an opportunity as one of those risk mitigation coping capacities that farmers and livestock producers can buy with livestock insurance. When times of crisis, then there's actual payouts to incentivize them to either sell early, which I think is another one of those key strategies that we want to see in place, as well as if there is a loss of commodity, they're able to receive a proportion of what that income loss would have been. And so it's really buying insurance to save livelihood gains throughout the time frame. And so we're seeing it obviously in Kenya. There's both in livestock, these types of insurance schemes are available both in the crops and in livestock sector. The adoption rate is, I think, a little bit slower than we would like, but I think it's because sometimes it's information and access to information and how the payouts and how the system works. And so I think one of the things we can do together through partnerships is ensure that the information is available on the insurance schemes and how they work and how farmers and livestock keepers can get access to the information so they can subscribe.
I want to bring in at that point, Margaret, and the fact has been that even as you drive the gains in terms of the livelihoods, in terms of the health, the aspects of resilience, commercialization, and creating running businesses then becomes really critical. Do you think that that sort of insurance, and at this rate, I know they had tried parametric where they bring it down to the farm, to the household level, and they'd count your goats and cows and say 1 cow, 5 goats. That is 1 unit of insurance and that sort of thing. Has it been tough to get people to sort of think through, accept these sorts of things?
Like Jennifer has said, when it comes to insurance, and I think also this is basically even for Kenya. Let's not just talk about even for
Our
that area.
Is really
Our penetration when it comes to insurance is it's one thing. But there are opportunities, and I'm happy that even there is also insurance that is also tailored to what is also acceptable to the people. For example, you'll find takaful, which is also acceptable to the Muslim community. So slowly by slowly, I think this is something that will continue gaining traction, having more people, buying into insurance. Because also, I think traditionally there has been a lot of mistrust, but I think as more and more people get into it and people actually see that have actually been paid out, also more people get interested in getting into it. And the fact that also we are working a lot with different groups, like with organized, like women groups or farmer groups or those kind of groups, that also helps in terms of the penetration. And within these groups, they are also able to kind of aggregate their resources through savings, through lending to each other, and that also helps in bringing in that kind of support to each other.
Jennifer, let's talk about specialization and creation of different roles along the value chain, especially for the youth, and how technology plays a role in that space. With access to the internet, people can tell the price of a crop, the price of beef, livestock on the hoof in the market, empowering them when it comes to selling and offtake. But you then, of course, usually find that the challenges are these places tend to be quite remote. So they often have to rely on some sorts of brokers and aggregators and that sort of thing. Even with the cooperatives and that sort of thing in place, what are the roles that we then have to start to create in these value chains that the youth can play a role in, that then bring these people closer to the markets, create much more market information and reduce asymmetry?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time, I think, for the youth and entrepreneurship. We were just talking, Margaret and I were talking before we arrived at the studio about a young woman in Marsabit on the shore of Lake Turkana, who has brought innovation and found a niche opportunity of turning fish waste into a commodity of omega-3 into fish oil. And so she's used the internet to identify this need that the fish oil has a demand and a market here in Kenya. And she's then figured out there's a byproduct that's going to waste and not being productive. And she's now brought in her business model of turning that waste into a productive commodity that she can earn a livelihood from. And so I think the youth have wonderful, wonderful skills and abilities to really tap into opportunities through their looking through the internet, surfing and identifying niche markets and then applying it in their culture and their context to make it a unique opportunity for value addition and a livelihood opportunity that 5 years ago none of us would have thought was possible on the shores of Lake Turkana in Marsabit. And so we had a great opportunity to talk about that and how she's advancing and marketing that.
Really interesting. So we're almost at the end of our show, ladies. I want to give you about a minute and a half each to talk about anything that you feel might be important that we might not have touched on. Let's start off with you, Margaret.
I think maybe for me what I would say is that there is a lot of potential in the north, but also for us to be able to tap into this potential, there also has to be a lot of collaborative effort, not just among the development partners, but also with the government and also with these communities. And if we harness all our resources together, we can actually transform a lot of lives, we can transform the livelihoods. There is also a lot of potential in the livestock, just even in the livestock industry itself, apart also from these other areas. So for me, my appeal and also what I'm looking forward to is also for all of us to tap into some of these opportunities and support these communities to diversify their livelihoods and increase their resilience.
Broad-based activity by partners. Jennifer.
Yes, and U.S. government through the U.S. Agency for International Development, we've been able to partner with Kenyans over the last 60 years. And I think that's a critical point is partnership. I think together, collectively, we can work towards bringing together this collective base to change opportunities that exist in northern Kenya and some of these borderland areas to really allow them to drive their development and have prosperous lives. And it's just been truly remarkable, I think, through the initiatives we've seen, and I think it's critical to remember there's multiple stakeholders that need to be at the table and allow all voices to be at that table, whether it's governments, counties, communities, private sector, youth, women, and through those collective voices, I think we truly can drive prosperous opportunities for all in Kenya.
Indeed, a really interesting conversation there, ladies. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Peter.
Asante. Now, of course, on that note, is where we want to bring it to a close here on this edition of Farm Kenya. Of course, the conversation today has been around the borderlands, the arid and semi-arid lands, not just in Kenya, but across East Africa and other parts of the world, which face almost similar circumstances, almost similar challenges. But of course, noting that there are unique solutions to unique challenges, and these have to be participatory and involving the locals and other stakeholders. That, of course, in all of our conversation today. Well, we want to bring it to a close right there. My name is Peter Wakaba. It has been a blast having you here. The show continues here tomorrow, so do make a date with us. Of course, the news continues later on about farming, agriculture, and business later on KTN Business Today and KTN Prime Business. My name is Peter Wakaba. Do continue to enjoy the rest of your viewing. Kwaheri ya kuonana.
Huwa mkono ambao unalima ardhi, mlango wa mkulima kuwa mshindi.